on.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Gringo Show. Thank you so much for joining us as we are now only 5 days until the U.S. presidential election and the entire world are on pins and needles, or estoy en alfileres or agujas. Yes, my gringo tendency to think that any idiom in English can just be translated into Spanish, like agua abajo del puente. But this saying means being anxious, nervous, agitated, in suspense, in a worried or excited state, to be tense or waiting nervously for something, which describes the mood of almost every single American right now, except Bobby from Wichita, Kansas, who's like, screw the world. I don't believe in politics, man. I don't vote. They all suck. Who cares? Well, guess what, Bobby? Your skateboard park or comic book store may be closed for another 12 months if the wrong guy wins. So you better go out and vote, Robert. We're going to have full coverage of the election, and we have an incredible guest, not the ambassador with the cool jacket, hashtag ambassador jacket, but the ambassador before this one. Roberta Jacobson is with us on the show. There's so much going on this week. We don't have time to talk about the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett to the U.S. Supreme Court, or the fact that Trump's personal lawyer and former mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani, was caught in the new Borat film lying on the bed with his hand down his pants. Allegedly, what he said was going to fix his shirt. Right. So much going on. There's so much going on even that the residents of Mexico City are tuning into the U.S. election. Let's check in with Javi in Chilangoland to see how they are reacting.
Hello Dan, I'm on the street of Mexico City, aka Chilangoland. I was asking people about the US presidential election, and then I realized that some of them didn't even know anything about it. So I started making questions with information that wasn't true at all. So come to see the results.
Podría hacer que el gobierno de ese país estuviera un poquito más equilibrado, porque hay más discriminación hacia la mujer, también obviamente hacia las personas de color, mexicanos, chinos, etc.
Pues sí sería bueno, ¿no? Porque pues, casi no hay, ahora sí que mujeres que sean presidentes.
Y dejar de ser tan machista.
¿Ya ganó? ¡Ah, Dios!
Yo siento que igual no nos puede ir tan mal, pero pues a ver qué pasa.
No sabía que había sido reelecto, según yo todavía no son las elecciones.
Todavía no sabemos, hasta el 3 de noviembre.
No lo había escuchado, la verdad.
Okay. Ah, Dios. So as you could see, some people are informed, some of them don't. That is what it is. And back to you, Dan. Take care and please use a mask. Please use a mask. See you next week. Take care.
Thanks, Javi, for your report. But first, while the United States has just hit the milestone of 9 million infected with COVID, with last week being a record week of averaging 70,000 new infections per day, let's talk about COVID in Mexico. Residents of this fine city of tacos were extremely hopeful that in September that the curve was finally bending. People started resuming normal activities, waiting for that damn streetlight to just turn yellow. Even COVID response chief Hugo Lopez-Gatell was going out to dinner, smooching his girlfriend on the street. But Mother COVID was like, not so fast. The Chilango rumor mill was in full force the past few weeks. Like, mira, mi prima trabaja en Secretaría de Comunicaciones y Transportes y ella tiene amigo y su cuñada trabaja con Sheinbaum y after the brain queen cell, we're going back to Semáforo Rojo. Or we've heard we're closing after the Day of the Dead, or they're changing all of the Sanborns uniforms from futuristic folklorico to red streetlights. We've heard them all, but look closely at the chart. Even though the city has definitely not returned to levels seen in the spring, in the last 2 weeks, cases have been going up, and on Tuesday, head of Mexico City government, Claudia Sheinbaum, announced that she has tested positive for COVID. And people are sick and tired of staying home. Over the weekend, Mexico City's government reported over 11,000 noise complaints stemming from parties and other social gatherings. Nightclubs are open. Secret music festivals with undisclosed locations have been popping up. People are trying to return to normal, but the city is not ready. And the exposure exists when people gather in small indoor spaces without masks, especially when there is smoking involved. And we know Chilangos love their Marlboros. This poses a dangerous situation not only for the club goers, but the thousands of workers who have no choice but to go to work, who have struggled to get by and need any opportunity to make money to pay their rent and feed their families. The risk is that they get infected by a fresa party goer, usually the guy who has like the largest Ralph Lauren logo on his shirt, or Rodrigo's like, hey, I'm going to be the coolest guy in this illegal club. So instead of bringing my polo shirt, I'm going to bring a polo horse with me to the club. Julio, I don't think they'll let you in with your horse. And he's like, don't worry, I know the owner. And by the way, can I get some champagne and sparklers? But the waiter goes back to his colonia after being infected by Julio. And then the virus spreads among his family and friends who may not have had access to good healthcare and medicine. In Mexico City, 1 out of every 3 people who enter the hospital die. And in our great city, over 156,000 people have died. That's a lot of families who are missing their loved ones. And the bigger problem is that if you're asymptomatic and young and you have COVID and you go into these clubs, you're not just putting yourself at risk, but the hardworking people around you as well. This disease is not like AIDS, because with AIDS, you choose to go out and have unprotected sex with somebody. It's your choice, your right, and you're the one that suffers the consequences, but not the same with COVID. If you are a spreader, you may give it to someone who may not have had that choice, because the person who gets it does not make a conscious decision to do it. This is why the disease is not about us individually. It's about everyone around us, and we have to make a decision that not only affects us, but will affect everybody. And this is where we struggle. We have to stop caring for just ourselves. And reports are that this can go on for another 12 months or more, because a widespread vaccine administration is going to take a very long time, especially in a place where people do not trust or believe in what the government says. We must stay vigilant. But in other news, the maker of Trader Joe's branded gluten-free battered halibut announced a massive recall of this product. I'm going to say it again. Gluten-free battered halibut. Ew. I'm sure there's a halibut somewhere that's thinking like, one day I'm going to be caught in a net. I'm going to be sliced, battered, frozen, and be sold at Trader Joe's for $3.99. In Mexico, listen, why is it your dream to live in the United States? You walk into an American supermarket and you have aisles and aisles full of freezers, frozen pancake mix, prepackaged Thanksgiving dinners, whatever you want, salt it, freeze it, ship it, great shelf life, buy it, microwave it, and ready on your plate in 1 minute flat. It's like the American efficiency that makes people eat fatty processed foods full of sodium, and probably one of the reasons why the US leads the world in COVID deaths. In Mexico, the frozen food section is usually only 1 or 2 freezers to store naturally cold things like ice cream and vegetables, or your favorite bubulubu. Because if you haven't tried bubulubu or frozen bubulubu, it's freaking good. You won't find frozen battered halibut in your local Sumesa or Superama, which, by the way, just announced they're changing their name from Superama to Walmart Express. So your favorite neighborhood grocery store has just received its little deep secret. It's a Walmart. Anyway, Mexico, let's be grateful we can buy fresh, beautiful, delicious orange juice on the street and not one made by frozen concentrate that can be salted, frozen, shipped, and stored for months. Great margins, terrible taste. But Gringo Show viewers, another historic moment. We are so excited to appoint a new lord to Mexico's royal family of ladies and lords. Heary, heary, as your official mi rey. Anyone got a cross and some stuff in my chest hair? I now appoint Raul Bermudez Arriola, representative of the National Tourism Promotion Fund, also known as Fonatur, in Cancun as an official Lord of Mexico. That's right. Last week, Raul, or now we call him Lord Fonatur, became very upset when the operators of the gym in the condominium complex in Cancun would not let him in because it was at full capacity and would be in violation of the COVID restrictions set forth by the government of Quintana Roo. Using his position of power and influence, as a lord would, he threatened to shut the gym down, even though he had absolutely no authority to do so, and in lines with his new title, lost his damn mind. Of course, this generated incredible social media buzz here in Mexico, and yet another example of someone trying to use their power to get something done. Raul, welcome to Mexican royalty. In other major news, the Los Angeles Dodgers finally won the World Series after a 32-year drought, defeating the Tampa Bay Rays 4-2. Now, the pitcher that threw the last pitch is Mexico's own Julio Urias from Culiacan, Sinaloa, and he was joined by rookie Victor Gonzalez from Tuxpan, Nayarit. Sorry, Tuxpan, Veracruz, he's not from your city. You can't claim him. You have a parade in his honor, and sorry, you cannot make November 16th, Gonzalez's birthday, a city holiday. But many in Mexico and Chicanos in the U.S. celebrated the fact that Urias pitched 2 1/3 scoreless innings. The only people angry were Rays fans and Donald Trump, who then updated his campaign slogan to say, "Build the wall so we can keep out World Series winning pitchers, robbers, and rapists." Got to make everything political, guys. Sorry, it's a few days before the election. But of course, fanatic President Andres Manuel López Obrador celebrated this big win, and the two players, the one person on Twitter who was constantly trolling AMLO was like, "What is he doing? Watching baseball in a pandemic? So irresponsible." And I was like, give the guy a break. He's having a tough time. Let the president watch the game. Anyway, this is a very proud day for Mexico and Mexican baseball. But again, the election is only 5 days away, and things are definitely heating up in what will be the most expensive campaign in U.S. history, expected to cost more than $14 billion. That's insane. But here's an update so you don't have to follow yourself. First, let's talk about the polls. There hasn't been much change since last week when the latest CNN poll of polls has Biden with an astounding 12-point lead with 5 days to go. At this point, Hillary was polling at 3 to 5 points higher than Trump. But Biden is also polling really well in battleground states like Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, and surprisingly, there are extremely close races in Texas and Georgia, which we will get to in a bit. Second, let's talk about voter turnout. As of yesterday, more than 75.5 million votes have been cast in early voting, and that represents 55% of the total turnout in 2016. More states this year have allowed people to vote before Election Day due to COVID, opening the polls early or voting by mail to avoid the large crowds on Election Day on Tuesday. And listen to this. Texas has received over 8.4 million votes, which represents 94% of the total vote that was received in 2016, and Florida has contributed 72% of their total vote. Democrats are voting in huge margins compared to Republicans, but Republicans are catching up and likely to vote on Election Day because they ain't scared of COVID, and the president has done what he can to delegitimize the mail-in process. Third, Biden and fellow Democrats have crushed many fundraising records and a lot more cash right now than Republicans, allowing them to flood the airwaves with so much advertising to drive home their message. So if we take these three factors and put them together, it is highly likely that Joe Biden will become the 46th president of the United States. And I am ready to announce the Gringo Show's electoral map prediction for 2020. Drum roll. Wait, we're not so technical here. We don't have like things to do it, right? So guys, can you help me? Drum roll, please. All right, here is my Gringo prediction map. Joe Biden will win the presidency with 311 electoral votes, winning all the states that he needs to claim victory. Let's see how I do. We'll look at the electoral maps over the next couple of weeks and see if I got it right. You can also go to our Facebook Live or YouTube to see the map again. We'll see how we did. But wait a minute. If you're a Biden fan, before you open that champagne or in Tecate Light or eat a gringa, remember, this is 2020. Anything can happen. Supposedly, there is a meteor headed to Earth. So who knows? Let's remember the things we've been talking about. Number one, the Russians. And now we've learned that the Iranians and possibly the Chinese are trying to influence the election or hack and change the polls. Second, Trump is trying to legitimize the election by calling fraud even before votes are counted. A lot of mail-in ballots can be lost. There will be a lot of legal challenges. And remember, now with the new Supreme Court justice, they may make decisions that will tilt in Trump's favor. Remember 2000 between Bush and Gore, and here in Mexico in 2006 between AMLO and Calderon. But finally, let's talk about one more variable that we've been talking about here on the Gringo Show for months, the Latino vote. Latinos are not polling for Biden with the same numbers that they voted for Hillary in 2016. There are ideas that many are moving towards religious conservatism, trending to be against immigration, and simply a lot of machismo. And this could be pivotal in states like Arizona, Florida, and now Texas, because some pollsters and strategists think that Biden can win Texas. This is extraordinary because Texas hasn't chosen a Democratic president since 1976. If Joe Biden wins this state, game over. The election will be win. And billionaire, former New York City mayor, and the guy responsible for Mexico's sugar tax, Michael Bloomberg, has poured millions of dollars into the last-minute advertising. And now Kamala Harris, the VP nominee, will make a campaign appearance tomorrow in McAllen, Texas. The Rio Grande Valley is rich with Democratic votes and hasn't seen the same turnout as the rest of the state. So here's my challenge to you, Mexican Americans, Mexicans, or anybody who's watching this. If you know anybody in the Rio Grande Valley who is registered to vote and hasn't voted yet, urge them to do so because they can decide the outcome of this election. So for more on this, the impact on the election on the U.S.-Mexico relations, and other election-related news, it is an honor and a very, very big pleasure to welcome former U.S. Ambassador to Mexico, Roberta Jacobson, to the show. Ambassador, how are you? I'm so glad you came with us. I know it's really late over there. We changed our clocks, and I know you're a notoriously early sleep, right?
Well, I'm not so old that I can't stay up this late, but I do get up early most days. So you're keeping me up past my bedtime, Dan, but it's for a good cause. I'm thrilled to be here.
Ambassador, for coming on. Let's get started. I have a lot of questions for you, a lot of things that I just talked about in this last segment that I want to ask you about more. But I want to start really focusing on Mexico because I know you had a lot to do with developing the U.S.-Mexico relationship in the last administration. And there are a lot of people in Mexico who think that a Trump administration would be better for Mexico because all Trump will ask him is put people at the border, keep out of immigration, and I don't really care what else you do. And AMLO would like that because he doesn't have to be restricted by, say, a Biden administration who would be getting into human rights and the drug trade and labor laws, all these things that maybe AMLO would not like. What do you think about that?
Well, I think there's a couple things. First of all, I think in the end, that's not necessarily good for Mexico. And I'm not sure that's even good for López Obrador. To have a continued Trump presidency. Remember the insults to Mexicans, but also the immigration policies are not sustainable. Eventually, this is a problem for Mexico, too, to keep all these people in Mexico, especially during a severe recession like a depression that Mexico's having right now. I also think it's a little bit of a betrayal of our own values. We're not working together. And Donald Trump could impose tariffs at any moment. We've seen that for any reason on Mexico and take it all back. So I think the arbitrary and capricious nature of Trump is also something that, you don't want to poke that bear. And I don't think that's good for Mexico.
Gomez on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he said that he thought that that AMLO was secretly trying to assure that Trump was elected because, on the surface, everybody thinks that the relationship is a pretty good one, no?
I think, look, they've had a surprisingly good relationship. That's absolutely right. And you're certainly right, and viewers are right if they think that there are uncomfortable issues that don't get brought up by Donald Trump, right? Democracy, rule of law, and security issues, frankly. But you can't resolve those alone in Mexico. You can't resolve the security problems alone, and we're not talking about them. I also think you got to acknowledge that on climate issues and on energy, they're going to be in a different place, Joe Biden and López Obrador. There's no doubt. But I think that is something we need to talk about and we need to work together on. We need to deepen this relationship. It's going okay because it's superficial. It's like that teenager who never realizes their potential. That's what our relationship is right now. It's arrested development.
Right. And it seems like things are being affected on the border. And as I said before, it's extraordinary to me to think about all of Trump's rhetoric. And now Latinos are leaning more towards Trump than they did 4 years ago. There was a late poll that said that Hillary won 60 to 61% of the Latino vote, and now Biden's polling at 51%. So I mentioned a couple of the reasons, but what is your opinion on this? This is a really strange phenomenon because it seems that more minority voters are choosing Biden than they did Hillary in 2016.
I think overall that's not true of minorities writ large. It may be true of some Latino voters. Certainly conservative values on things like LGBTQ issues or other things may drive them more towards Republicans. I think the question is, how important is immigration and immigration issues? When migration was largely Mexican, I think there was a lot more attention to migration, and that could happen again as Mexican numbers go up. When migration is non-Mexican, with Mexican Americans and Mexicans in the United States being the largest of the Latino minority, I think that may make a difference. I also think you have to look at Cuban Americans, Venezuelan Americans as part of that Latino quotient who have always been Republican. So I think those numbers will shift a little bit. I think those numbers are actually better than what you're seeing in some of the polls for Biden. But I think there's going to be a push right through the tape, as they say, to get the Latino vote out and make sure it votes Democratic, especially in places like Arizona and Texas.
There's been some criticism on the Biden campaign that he hasn't doing enough. And I guess you can always say that a candidate doesn't do enough. Do you think that they've been doing enough Latin outreach in these communities? And also, we know that there's been an incredible amount of misinformation campaigns targeted at voters in Florida and Texas and other battleground states. What do you think is going to happen?
I think there has been an enormous amount of misinformation, disinformation, as well as voter suppression in these places. And I think it's been targeted at Latino and communities of color. I do think the Biden campaign has done a fair amount. You can always do more. Joe Biden had a plan directed at Puerto Rico and debuted it in Florida over a month ago. Donald Trump didn't talk about Puerto Rico till the last couple of days. You've had Kamala Harris making visits to Florida, to the Latino community, and you've had the candidate going to places where there are large Latino populations. So I think that Joe Biden is addressing that issue, but I think that you can always do more. And I think it'll be important to continue to push that message out right up until the end, even if 75 million Americans have voted.
Trump didn't throw paper towels at voters in Florida today. Let's talk about Kamala Harris tomorrow, who will be flying to McAllen, Texas, to doing an event. And that's an extraordinary development, as I mentioned in the segment, because I don't remember the last time a Democratic candidate was actively campaigning in Texas only days before. Number one, what is that about? Number two, why isn't Biden deciding to go to Texas in those last days? Because I know Beto O'Rourke and some of the Texas representatives are urging him to do so, and he has not announced any plans to go to Texas yet. Do you think Texas is in possibility that Texas can go blue?
Well, look, Texas has been in play for a while now. Remember that analysts have been telling us that Texas is going blue or at least purple, in the last two elections, and it hasn't. And it may not in this election either. It may stay red, as your map showed. But the fact is, it is changing. And it's changing inexorably and will stay changed because of the demographics towards voters who skew Democratic. So I think that's one of the reasons why Kamala Harris is going. She knows that it's a critical issue, border trade, border security. But, where you deploy your resources at the very end of an election race is always a debate that's difficult. And so the fact that Kamala Harris is going means Texas is in play. The fact that Joe Biden's not going does not mean Texas is not in play. He's just got to figure out where to spend his time in the 5 days. I think Texas has gotten a fair amount of attention in what my friend Beto O'Rourke calls the most important election perhaps since 1864.
Okay. And if Biden wins and he starts brand new, what would be, if you were part of the administration, what would be the first thing that Biden should tackle with Mexico?
Well, I think actually Joe Biden has said one of the things that he'll do, which I think is absolutely correct. He'll seek an early meeting with AMLO to get together with him and talk about a joint strategy on the economy and on security, two areas that they've got to focus on. And he will stop using the offensive and nasty rhetoric immediately. So those would be early wins in my view.
Right. Ambassador Roberta Jacobson, thank you so much. And I just want to say, as a resident of Mexico City and part of the American community, you are incredibly highly respected here. Everybody in the American community talked very highly about you as ambassador, and we hope to see you back here sometime soon with us.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. I look forward to it. I really do.
Thank you, Ambassador Roberta Jacobson. Thank you so much. All right, we have a lot of things coming up at the Gringo this week, so let's hop on over to Laila Garcia Mora, commercial director and Pinche Gringo show correspondent with more. Laila, you're holding up, right? You're proud. Like you got 1 month left, right? It's pretty amazing.
Month and a half, so I'm still holding.
You can be like a bowler or an avocado for Halloween or something like that, right?
Yes, I'm ready. A sunny side up egg also could work.
I like that. That's amazing. Laila, listen, the election is Tuesday. And as I said, everybody is freaking out and really tense, especially the American community here in Mexico. But we have something to ease their nerves on Tuesday. Tell us more about it.
Yes, we're freaking out as we did in the debates. And we're having a transmission night for the election night. So we can all get together and we can go through this wrecking nerve night. So we are to be together enjoying barbecue while we wait for the results. If there are results on this day, if not, we have to keep eating barbecue and wait more.
Absolutely. First of all, I just realized that I had an interview with the ambassador with my shirt on the whole time, like really offensive, but so it's going to be a socially distanced event, and I know that that it's going to be safe for everybody. What types of activities are going to be happening there?
Okay, we're gonna have trivia. We're gonna have welcome cocktails. We're gonna have our amazing food. And whoever went to one of our debates knows that we have socially distanced dynamics. So everybody feels safe and everybody feels, and they can concentrate on what's happening on the TV.
Right. Yeah,
Even if we cry or we laugh, we are COVID-free.
I mean, I remember, Laila, 4 years ago, I think it was your first week on the job, and you had to put together the last one, and it was the worst day in the Pinche Gringo's history. Everybody was crying and the mascara running down their faces. You remember this, right?
And I still wake up in the middle of the night covered with sweat.
So do I, every day with this guy. All right, let's talk about something much better. Probably the best thing you can talk about at Pinche Gringo. Our most famous dish was recognized by Reforma. Tell us more about this.
Yes, our most famous dish, that it's our delicious mac and cheese, and I sent you some. I know that you've tried it a million times, but our amazing mac and cheese, like it doesn't end. So this week we get a mention from Reforma that we respect their opinion a lot as the best mac and cheese in Mexico City. So it's a big honor for us. Because it's a simple food, but it goes with everything. Like you can combine it with ribs, with brisket, with whatever. Kids love it. We all love it.
I love it too, Laila. Best mac and cheese ever. 3 years, I think, when I came to Pinche Gringo, I ate this every single day, and I wasn't so happy about it. You know, I had a lot of panza.
Panzas are good then.
I know. Panzas are good. Laila Garcia Mora, Pinche Gringo Show correspondent. Thank you so much, Laila. That does it for this edition of the Gringo Show. Join us next week as we go through all the election results and, of course, other news, culture, sports, whatever that is affecting Mexico and the U.S. On a side note, on behalf of the entire Gringo Show crew, we'd like to wish our executive producer, Martha, our sincerest wishes for a full and speedy recovery. We all love you very much and can't wait for you to get back on your feet and help our little show grow. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great week. Be safe, be strong for Tuesday's election. And remember, the Gringo Show as your go-to source for all bilateral relationships. Have a great night.
Pinche gringo, Mexico is laughing thanks to you. We like to watch you dance salsa and listen to your bad Spanish too. We like to watch you almost die from spicy food. Ooh.